Okay, so yeah, let's start on the agriculture chapter again. Let's finish up parts of the agriculture and then we can move on to mathematics for today. Um, so yeah, last time we talked about different types of um farming methods like land rotation and crop rotation and other methods. But today we'll be moving on to some different topics in agriculture. So let's start with this question about organic farming. So, an advantage of practicing organic farming is that it does what do you think? What is an advantage of this method? So, yeah, the answer is A. What is one? It's increasing soil fertility. So, because we haven't talked about organic farming yet, let me quickly explain what it is. So, organic farming improves what it does, it improves soil fertility by using natural compost, manure, biological pest control, and crop rotation, which enhances the soil's nutrient content and structure over time. So, organic farming is a method of using organic materials to farm. And one of the best advantage is that it increases soil fertility. And if you look at answers B, C, and D, they are just secondary benefits. So things like reducing pest infestation. Yes, that is also part of an advantage of an organic farming, but it is more of a secondary benefit. It's not the most advantageous event after doing the organic farming. If you look at C, reducing toxicity level is also a secondary benefit. And D, increasing resistance to plant disease is also a secondary benefit of organic farming. So the best answer here is A. Okay. So let's talk more about organic farming and different methods of organic farming. So we talked about this, all these different methods. So first is the zero budget natural farming, which is also like a practice of part of a practice of organic farming. There's also crop rotation that we've talked about. Every year we plant different crops and rotate them to maintain the soil fertility. And we also have adding organic manure and compost. And we also plant diverse crop selection in organic farming. And in organic farming, they also use natural pesticides. And instead of using the artificial chemicals, they use natural resources. And finally, there's organic livestock integration, meaning that they also raise animals too in these farmings because that will increase animal manure and that will help the plants grow better. So all of these methods help by increasing the fertility of the soil. That was why the answer choice for this question was A. All of these help increase the soil fertility. Okay. Now let's look at this next question. Which of the following factors has the greatest influence on vegetable crop production? What do you think is the answer? Oh, yeah. If you said C, then yeah, that is correct. If you said the source of water. So, yeah, as you said, water is the most essential part for growth and development for vegetable crops. Now, vegetables usually require the frequent and consistent watering, especially in the dry seasons. And yeah, water is the most crucial factor for actual crop growth. So it is very, very important. That's why it has you see in the question, greatest influence. That means what is affects the most in plant growth. That is water. Okay, great job. Let's move on to this question. The main reason for staking tomato is to ensure what? Staking means using this stick. These guys see this stick? Using this stick to grow the tomatoes. Mm. Yeah, I'm hearing different answers. I'm hearing maybe B, and I think I heard some C's or A's. But the reason for using these sticks and staking the tomato is to, yeah, it's the fruits, so that the fruits do not get rotten. So tomatoes are staked to keep the fruit off the ground. So if you stake the tomatoes, it'll help the tomatoes be off the ground. You can see none of them are touching the ground. None of them are touching the ground. And if none of them touches the ground, it'll be not easier to, well, if it touches the ground, it'll be easier to rot due to fungus in the soil. But when the tomatoes are staked, the fruit isn't touching the soil. So that means it'll be a clean tomato. Um, Clean tomatoes will be harvested, and there will be less chance that it will be rotted because it was not on the ground. That's why the answer is D. Staking tomatoes prevent the tomatoes from touching the ground, and it'll help it not rot, do not get rotten. Okay, let's do this question. Which of the following fruits is dispersed by water? Dispersed meaning the seeds or fruits travel to a new place, especially by flowing on water. Yeah, that's right. The answer here is A. So I just put a couple of different examples of how different fruits can disperse their seeds. So things like cottonwood seed, they're very light, so they can be carried around by wind. But coconut trees are rather heavy, so they cannot be carried by wind. They usually get carried by water to different places to grow. But other seeds, like strawberry, rambutan, apples, coffee, etc., are eaten by animals and they get dispersed or traveled to different places by getting eaten by animals. And yeah, but here, coconut is what's being dispersed by water specifically. That is why the answer is A. Okay, so let's move on. Um, a fruit in which the pappus has been modified into a parachute structure is dispersed by what? So this is a parachute structure. Can you see this? That is a parachute structure. This one. What do you think this is dispersed by? Looking at the shape. Yeah, I heard D. Yeah, that's definitely correct. The answer here is D, and that's because you can see there is, well, the name says it's a parachute structure, and most of these seats are very, very light. And by like expanding their surface area, they can get in contact with the air more and therefore be carried by the wind better this way. By building like a parachute, you can think of it flying in the air. Okay, so that was wind for the parachute structure. And let's look at this question. What do you think an example of a legume is? Legume is. So what is an example of a legume? Yeah. Um, the answer is A. I think I heard a couple A's. Um, legumes. Do you remember what a legume was? So, legume is a type of plant that grows seeds in a pod, like this one. This is an example of a groundnut or peas, sorry, peas in this case. But there are things like beans, peas, lentils, and groundnuts or peanuts are all examples of legumes. So legumes are important both in the nitrogen cycle and in the crop rotation. You might remember this from crop rotation. So, yeah, legumes, they add nitrogen to the soil, which helps other plants grow. And they're usually the year, first year plant of the crop rotation. We learned it last week, and yeah, they're very important. They're also rich in protein, and they're very healthy to eat. Okay, but an example is a groundnut. You can maybe memorize some of these as well, like beans, peas, and lentils. Okay, let's move on. This theory question, I think it was a little bit challenging in terms of names. So I will try to go through this while teaching. So it says to give a common name for the devices shown here, A, B, and C. And you can answer by saying these are all garden tools or farming tools. So, yeah, indeed, all of these are used for farming. That was question one. If you look at question two, it says to name each of the devices labeled A, B, and C. So, A is called a mattock. B is called a peg. And C is called a hand fork. And number three asks to state one use of each of the devices named in two. So mattock here, this A, this shaped tool right here, is used to remove the roots and the stumps of a tree. And this is used also to break up hard soil. So you can see in these pictures, this person is trying to maybe break the roots or the stumps. And then this person is trying to break up the hard soil. So you can see that this is used more of a tough job, more of a strength requiring, breaking up stuff. And then this next one, B, this peg is used for making spots on the land. It's either used to support or mark something. So you can put the peg to make sure that this is the right place, just as a marker, or you can also use it to support certain plants to grow. Like tomatoes that we talked about, they need stakes to grow. And C, this object was a hand fork. Hand fork is used for weeding or removing small plants, or loosening hard soil or stirring, and mixing fertilizer. So it is used for smaller jobs. Because you can see the sizes are way different, right? This is a lot more bigger and stronger than the smaller hand fork. So obviously, this larger mattock is used for harder job like digging, breaking up the roots, so on. But the hand fork is used for smaller jobs like removing small plants. Okay, number four, state two effects of the use of device C on the soil. Yeah, we kind of talked about this already. One of the reasons of using the hand fork is to loosen the topsoil. And what happens if we loosen the topsoil? It improves aeration, meaning that air can go through the soil better, and there will be a better water circulation in the soil. Another effect is that it mixes in fertilizer evenly. So by sort of shuffling around the soil with the hand fork, it enhances nutrient content and improves the structure of the soil as well. Okay, finally, number five, it says to state two ways of prolonging the usefulness of the device labeled A. Remember this one, A mattock? Yeah. Two ways to manage the mattock is to clean and dry after use, preventing rusting, of course, and strengthen and sharpen it, and maintaining the blade is one of the key ways to make longer uses of the mattock. Okay, that was it for this theory question. And I've just gone through this relatively quickly in order to move on to other topics. But if you have any questions, um, feel free to stop and ask me. Um, but I will be moving on to this next topic. Okay, so we're talking now about the ecological factor. Ecological factor. So, ecological factor is any environmental elements that are living or non-living that can affect the life of organisms in an ecosystem. So anything that is, we also call them biotic and abiotic. Biotic means living, abiotic means non-living. So all of them are part of the ecological factors. They're parts of the environment that affects the organism or affects, and there's you can categorize these into, like I said, living and non-living, biotic and abiotic. So biotic factors are things like, every living things like humans, us, we are biotic factors. There are also things like, tigers, fishes, elephants, cats, and all the other living things, and also plants as well. Plants are a biotic factor. Plants are living. Abiotic factors are parts of the environment like rain, sunlight, wind, maybe some geography, oxygen, temperature, and more. But all of these are examples of ecological factors that affects the life of an organism. Okay, let's move on to this question here. Here, I think it's part of the theory question as well, but it asks what ecological factor was measured in this measuring cylinder. So, since this picture was not too clear, I'll try to explain this theory question as well. But usually, what is being measured by a measuring cylinder with a cone on top is some sort of liquid, like rain. So you can imagine raindrops entering this cylinder and then water being gathered down here. Number two asks to state three ways in which the ecological factor measured in this previous step is measured in this image. This is for measured in this image is important in agricultural soils. And you can answer this question by saying, like, water carries essential nutrients from soil to plant roots. So all of these benefits of water. Plants making food through photosynthesis with water. This is a very important point. They're able to live with water. Water is very essential for maintaining the plant's nutrition. Water helps seed germination as well, like we've seen with coconut seeds, right? And tiny organisms like bacteria and earthworms need moisture to live. So it supports other factors that benefit the soil as well. That's why water is very important in agricultural soils. So it says to name one farm tool that aids the ecological factor measured in four to perform its function in agricultural soils. You can pick any farm tool that we've learned so far, but you can pick other ones as well. So we've already talked about hand forks. And do you remember why hand forks are an important farm tool? They help clean the topsoil. They help clean the topsoil. So they help mix the nutrients better. They make airflow and water flow better. And you can also use farm tools like plow and hose or shovels or hose to help with the water soil interaction. So any farm tool that helps mix up the soil, makes a better soil structure, will allow the soil to have a better water to soil interaction. Now let's look at this last part of this question. Describe how the farm soil tool named in 6, that previous one, is used to aid the factor, just the water. So yeah, we've already talked about this, all of these hand forks, plow, hose, they break up the hard soil so that air and water can enter more easily. That's how it helps with the soil and water interaction. Okay. Do you have any question about this theory question? Um, because I did go over this quickly, and yeah, if you don't have any questions, then I will move on to this next question. So yeah, I think this next one is also parts of the theory question. But these ones are, I believe, not necessarily too important. So I will be quickly just going over this as well, just as a way to learn. So the crop that is infected by this swollen shoot disease it's called the cocoa. So whenever you see a question about swollen shoot disease, you can immediately think of cocoa. And this caught this disease is a part of the group called the virus. So this cocoa gets these swollen shoot virus, or it's also called the CSSV because it's the cocoa swollen shoot virus. And it is a form of a virus that infects the cocoa, infects the tree. And the method of spreading the disease is mainly through insects. So this disease is spread through insects, especially mealybugs. So mealybugs acquire the virus by feeding on the infected plants and then transmit them to the healthy plants by biting onto the next one. That's how they spread the disease. And these guys, these smaller guys, are the mealybugs. They eat the infected plants and then transmit them to healthy plants. Number 4 states or asks some ways of preventing the spread of swollen shoot disease. You can prevent this by early detection of the disease, and you can remove the infected trees right away. You can find ways to control the mealybugs, maybe using insecticides to kill them, You can use resistant varieties. You can make the plants more resistant to the bugs. And then there's farm hygiene, which is using clean tools after pruning to prevent the virus between the trees. Okay, yeah. This was just a question about the swollen shoot disease. So I hope you guys were able to learn something about it. Okay, so let's move on to this last section of agriculture. So, which of the following elements is a macro units, macronutrient for the plants? Yeah, macronutrients are elements that plants need in large amounts. Yeah, the answer is D. An example of a macronutrient is a sulfur, and that's because if you look at this picture here, these are all examples of macronutrients that are needed in large amounts. Plants need a lot of these. And things like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur are all needed in large, large amounts by the plants. And micronutrients are nutrients that are not as much needed, but still can improve their growth. And there are many other types of micronutrients as well. But definitely D, sulfur, is a macronutrient. Okay, so let's answer this question. A livestock farmer wants to achieve good health for animals being reared. Which of the following activities should be undertaken by the farmer? So, yeah, read carefully through these options and what do you think the answer is? Let's go through this step by step. So, who thinks one is correct? Is one correct? It, did you say D or B? Um, yeah, maybe if you said D, yeah, definitely. You're right. Great job. It's all one, two, and three. One, two, and three. Because all of these benefits the animals, right? Well, having vacation schedules definitely benefits animals, benefit them in good health. Providing balanced rations is definitely beneficial to the health of the animals. And providing good sanitation is also beneficial for the health of the animals. Yeah, okay. Then let's move on to this next question. An animal feed made up of high fiber is most likely to contain what, do you think? Yeah, the answer is B. It's the silage. So, silage here is a grass or crops that are stored and fermented to feed the animals later. And they're very high in moisture, meaning that, they contain a lot of water and they provide a lot of nutrients for the animals. So silage is especially useful because feeding livestock when fresh grass is not available, is difficult. And so farmers make these silages, which is, high in fiber from maize or grass to feed the cows during the dry season. But things like other plants, maize grains are high in carbohydrate. They're not as high in fiber as silage is. Silage is high in fiber. Soybeans are especially high in proteins, and wheat grains are especially high in carbohydrates as well. So the best answer here would be B, silage, just high in fiber. Remember? Okay. Yeah, here are some animal products that are protein rich. So all of these are protein rich feeds for the poultry. Things like feather meal, blood meal, fish meal, milk byproducts, and meat meal are all examples of protein-rich feed. And things like carbohydrate-rich feed are used for plant products. So plant products used in preparing the carbohydrate-rich feeds, things like sorghum, millet, maize, wheat, rice, and wheat bran. All of these are examples of sources of carbohydrates. And you can see the difference. Animal products often produce proteins, and plant products often produce carbohydrate. So that's what you need to know. Um, it's often that animals produce protein, plants produce carbohydrate. Okay. Yeah, this is also a part of an agriculture question, but let's see if we can answer this one. Which of the following food substances would produce a red precipitate when heated with Millen's reagent? So this might be a little bit difficult because we haven't learned this yet, but I can explain this to you. It's the groundnut. So the reason for that is the key clue here is Millen's reagent. Millen's reagent is a chemical solution used to test for proteins. So whenever you see Millen's reagent, think about proteins or testing for protein. Um, and that reagent produces the red color. If it reacts with the protein, it creates a red color. So whatever has the most protein would show the red, right? It would show the red. And groundnuts have the most protein. That's why the answer is B. Yeah, I hope everyone understands. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me any. But yeah, other choices like bananas, orange juice, pineapple juice are not really rich in proteins as a groundnut is. Okay, let's move on. Which of the following organisms attacks crops in storage? What are these called? Do you guys know? That's right. The answer is D, weevils. So yeah, these are these tiny guys, these tiny insects. They're just very small beetles that are known to attack and damage the stored grains and crops like rice, maize, and beans. Um, Things like crickets, grasshoppers, and millipedes, all of them do attack the crops, but they usually attack the crops that are in the field, not in the storage. The question asks, which organism attacks crops in storage? And weevils do that. Okay. Yeah, great. Um, yeah, that was the end for our BC agriculture chapter. And we will be moving on to mathematics. We'll be solving a few questions from the BECE math. This was the 2025 exam. So I will be going through um, the first 20 questions of this BEC mathematics. So, okay, so let's begin now about BEC mathematics of 2025. All right, let's start with this first question. What is the missing number in the sequence -5, -2, 1, blank, and 7? Yeah, do you think the answer is B here? Let's plug in 3. Yeah. So -5 and then -2, it's plus 3, right? Plus 3. -2 to 1 is plus 3. So it's all going up by plus 3, right? Then what would it be for the next one? Yeah, the answer would be C, right? Because if you add 3 each time, then -5, -2, 1, and then 1 plus 3 equals 4. So yeah, that's why the answer is C for this one. Okay, yeah, I've shown the steps here. So -5 plus 3 equals -2. -2 plus 3 equals 1. And then the next step, 1 plus 3 equals 4. Okay, let's move on to this next question. The population of a town is this number, 56,782. What is this number to three significant figures? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the answer is D. When it says three significant figures, yeah, I think you knew what it means. It means to round this number to the first three digits. The first three significant digits are 5, 6, and 7. The first three digits are 5, 6, and 7. So the next digit is 8. So we need to round this up. Since it is greater than or equal to 5, we round this up to 5, 6, 8 instead of 5, 6, 7. And then the rest of the digits need to be 0 because we only have three significant figures. So the resulting number, this rounded number, is 56,800. That's why the answer is D. So yeah, I hope you understand how to solve this significant figures problem. So three significant digits, and then the rest are 0 because it says three significant figures. If it were to say round this number to two significant figures, how would you solve it? Well, you would round this 7 up, this third digit, 7, up, and the number would be 57,000. It has only two significant figures. Okay. I hope this makes sense for everyone. And yeah, let's look at this next question. When 0.24 is expressed in the lowest form as A over B, the denominator is what? It's in the lowest. Yeah, so 0.24 can be represented as a fraction by 24 over 100. Right? I'm not sure if you're still solving this, but this is how you can represent this decimal as a fraction. So, but we're looking at the lowest form of the denominator. So this equals, do you know how to cancel the numerator and the denominator? Yeah, you can try to cancel the numerator and the denominator by dividing by 4. You can try by dividing by 4. This becomes 6 over 25 because 100 divided by 4 is 25. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And do you think this is the lowest form of 0.24? Then, yeah, I explained the steps here. So 6 over 25 is the lowest form. And of course, we're looking at the denominator. Denominator is the bottom number in a fraction. So the steps that we've gone through is we converted this decimal into a fraction, and then we canceled and simplified this fraction into 6 over 25. It's just the lowest form. And in this lowest form, the denominator is 25. Okay, yeah, we were talking about this question and just going through the steps in solving it. So we can express 0.24, this decimal, into a fraction of 24 over 100. And we can simplify the top and the bottom by dividing by, 2 and then 2 again, or dividing by 4 on both the numerator and the denominator to get 6 over 25, which is the lowest form. That's why the denominator is 25 in this lowest form of 0.24. Okay, I hope this makes sense to everyone. Um, yeah, do you have any questions about this question? If not, we can move on. Okay. Yeah, I hope this makes sense for everyone. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So other examples are things like if you want to express 0.424 in the lowest form, then you can set 424 over 1000, and then we can simplify the numerator and the denominator, and then get the lowest form of this fraction. You can also do this by 0.8. 0.8 is 8 over 10. And then dividing 2 on both the top number, the numerator, and the bottom number, denominator, he can get the lowest form of 4 over 5. Okay. A farm, let's look at this fourth question. A farm feeds 20 goats with 500 kilograms of cassava. How many goats can be fed with 200 kilograms of cassava? So I've put the general process here. So yeah, I can talk through this one as well. So 500 kilogram is needed to feed 20 goats. And the question asks, how many goats can be fed with 200 kilograms? So we can represent this as a proportion. So we can set, 20 to 500 equals, if we set X amount of goats for feeding 200 kilograms, then we can set X to 200. It is all proportion. 20 to 500 equals X to 200. And we can multiply these both sides. Here you can multiply X by 500 and then 200 by 20. We get 200 times 20 equals X times 500. And you can find X by dividing by 500. 20 times 200 divided by 500 is 8. That's why the answer is 8. So this is solving by proportion question. So yeah, feel free to write down the process. Um, but this is generally how you would solve questions like this. Yeah, does this make sense to everyone? Or do you have any questions about this question? Yeah, I'll give you some time to write down this question and the answer. So, yeah, let me ask you maybe one more question. This is with different numbers. So, 1 to 2 equals 3 to what? This is a similar question, but with different numbers. So what would be X here, do you think? So yeah, you can solve this by, you know, X equals 2 times 3. Since what we did here, multiply X, both sides, multiply X. This cancels, and then we can multiply 2 on both sides as well. So what you can do in these proportion is multiply the cross. That's what we did here, right? So X equals 2 times 3, which is equal to 6. So you can represent 1 to 2. You can write this similarly like this. 1 to 2 equals 3 to 6. Or this can also equal to 4 to 8, etc. It can go on and on. But if it has a number like this, so in our case, it was 20 to 500 equals X to 200. So you multiply what's in the middle and then equate that by multiplying the ones on the outside. That's how you solve the X. I hope, yeah, this makes sense to everyone. But I will be moving on to the next question. A man spends 560 Ghana cedis out of his weekly wage of 700 Ghana cedis and saves the rest. What percentage did he save? I think it's about calculating the percentage. So I'll give you time to read over this explanation and see if you understand. And then I can talk through it as well. So we spent 560 out of 700. And then we saved 140 out of 700 because 700 minus 560 equals 140. 140 Ghana cedis are saved. But what percentages this out of all the money that he had? Well, it's 140 divided by 700. And then it's a percentage. So you have to multiply by 100% at the end. So if you divide 140 by 700, multiply that by 100, then this becomes 14,000 divided by 700, which is 20%. That's why the answer is C. So does everyone understand how to solve this question?
Yeah. Kita po. Yeah, please, yeah, that right.
Okay, yeah, if you're done writing and if you understand this concept, we can move on. Yeah, number 6 asks, two interior angles of the triangle are these angles. Find an expression for the third angle. How do you think we can approach this problem, do you think? So what is the total angle of a triangle, do you think? Total angle of a triangle is 180 degrees. So the sum of the inner angles, the triangle, is 180. And what about rectangles? Inner angles of rectangles, the sum of inner angles of the rectangle is 360 degrees, right? So these are just conventions that we use. But since all sum of these inner angles is 180 degrees, we can add these together, right? So 3x minus 10 is the first angle plus the second angle, 4x plus 20 plus the third angle equals 180. Right? So we can find the third angle by subtracting first angle and the second angle from 180. Okay, so the steps are written down here. The sum of interior angles is 180 degrees. So summing them, like I've set up, equals 180. If you subtract both sides by the second and the first and the second angle, then we get 100 minus 3x minus 10 plus 4x plus 20. And then this can simplify into 170 minus 7x. Can everyone see how to solve this type of question? So first, you need to know that the sum of the inner angles is 180 degrees.
Please, can you go back again?
Okay, yeah, I can go over it again. So if you have a triangle and you have three angles, right? You have three angles in a triangle. If you add all these angles together, then it equals 180 degrees. Yeah. And we set up an equation by adding all three angles. You add this angle, 3x minus 10. You add the second angle, which is 4x plus 20. And then finally, you add the third angle. And all of these added together should be equal to 180, right? Do you understand? Okay. Now you can solve for the third angle. You can subtract this angle on both sides. So you're doing minus 3x minus 10 on both sides. Minus 3x minus 10. And then we're doing the same for this 4x plus 20. We're subtracting them on both sides from 180. And if you do that, you get 170 minus 7x. Subtract 180 by these two angles. And 100 minus 7x plus 10, this is 180 minus 7x minus 10. And that equals 170 minus 7x. That's why the answer is A. Yeah, does this make sense to everyone? Um,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, great. Um, and I will give you these slides later as well, maybe next week or maybe in a couple weeks to look at the questions again. But, okay, let's answer a few more questions for today. Um, Anna has one SETI notes and orders an ice cream for 1.75 SETIs and two coffees at 50 Ghana pesos each. How much does she have left? Her money.
Jamie, the answer is B.
Yeah, let's go
Jamie.
through this question. Yeah, okay. You're saying maybe the answer is B. Let's check. Um, so Emma starts with four one steady notes. So she starts with four steadies. An ice cream costs 1.75 steadies, and she buys two toffees, which are 50 pesos each. So 2 pesos equal one Ghana cedis, right? 250 pesos equal one Ghana cedi. So she spent how many in total? Total spent? That is 1.75 on ice cream. This is from ice cream, plus two toffees, which costed one cedi in total. So the total amount spent with ice cream and two toffees is 2.75. And what is 4 minus 2.75? That is 1.25 cedis are left. That's why the answer is A for this question. She spent 2.75 cedis in total, and she has 1.25 cedis left. Yeah, does this make sense for everyone? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, if this makes sense, then I'll be moving on to this question. Okay. This is a type of matrix addition and subtraction. So if A is set to be this and B is set to be this, can you find 2A minus B? Yeah, does this make sense to everyone? So we're multiplying this 2 by 1 matrix by 2 for A. So since we're finding 2A, this is 2, and we multiply 2 to both the first component and the second component. So if we multiply 2 on both components, we get negative 4, 2 for 2A. This equals 2A. And then we can subtract the two matrices. So we get negative 4, 2 minus this B over here. This is 2A minus B, negative 5, negative 3. And then since this is negative 4 minus negative 5, if there are two negatives, it becomes positive. Same with here. So it's negative 4 plus 5, and 2 plus 3 equals 1, 5. So if you're told to write a resulting matrix from 2A minus B, it would be 1, 5. Yeah, does this make sense to everyone? So you're subtracting, and if you're multiplying or subtracting, you apply it to both the top and the bottom component. Okay, so because of time, you might need to move on. But if you have any questions about this, you can always feel free to ask me. But always remember that you need to be careful about signs. So negative 4 minus negative 5 is equal to negative 4 plus 5, and 2 minus negative 3 is equal to 2 plus 3. Okay. And you can also add 2 by 2 matrices as well. We only dealt with 2 by 1 in this case, but 2 by 2 matrices work in the same case. So you add the same components. So you add this number, if you add this matrix and this matrix, you add this first component together, and that becomes the first component of the new matrix, 4 plus 1. And then 8 plus 0, 3 plus 5, and 7 plus 2 for the last one. Okay, let's move on to this next question. Can you find the rule for the mapping that is shown here? So this is a more difficult question. So you need to find a rule using t. So if the top number increases by 1, how much of the bottom number increase?
7.
Yeah, it's 11. Yeah, plus 11. And then you can add 1 here, and this also adds 11, plus 11, and then same here, plus 11, and more. So, yeah, when the top number increases by 1, the bottom number increases by 11. So, the first number is set to be 9, and the second number is 9 plus 11, which is 20. Third number is 9 plus 11 plus 11, that equals 32. And the fourth number is 9 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11 equals 42. So how many 11s are being added to each number? So in number 2, 111 is added. 11 times 1. In the third number, 2 11s are added. 11 times 2. So it's 9 plus 11 times 2. In the fourth number, 11 is added 3 times. So it is 9 plus 11 times 3. So how many 11s, or what number would be t if we said any number? So if t is a top number, you can see that 11s, how many 11s are added is t minus 1, right? Times 11 are added to 9. So you can see that the general formula here is 9 plus how many 11s are added? T minus 1. 11 times t minus 1. And you can make this even more simple by multiplying out. So you can write this as 9 plus 11t minus 11, or 11t minus 2. Yeah, I will wait some time for you to maybe write down. And if you have any questions, yeah, feel free to let me know. Okay, if everyone is done writing it down, or I can move on. Do you have any questions about this question? Does everyone understand how to solve this? Yeah, this was a pretty difficult question, but I hope you can see the pattern. The key part about this question is noticing the pattern. Okay, let's look at this one last question for today, number 10. In an examination, Abu answered 9 questions in 2 hours. He spent 20 minutes on the first question and the same time on each of the remaining questions. How many minutes did he spend on each of the other questions? So, how many minutes are in 1 hour? It's, yeah, 60 minutes. So, in 2 hours, it's 60 times 2, 120 minutes, right? In 2 hours. He spent 20 minutes in the first question. How many minutes are left? It's 120 minus 20 minutes equals 100 minutes left. So Abu spent 100 minutes on the rest of the question. So he solved the first question in 20 minutes, but he had 8 more questions left. So here shows how we can solve this that way. So he spent the same time on each of the 8 questions. So we can divide the remaining time, 100 minutes, divided by 8 questions to see how many minutes he spent on each question. Since he spent same time on each of the remaining questions, we divide that by 8. And then the answer that we get is 12.5. Yeah, does everyone understand, or do you want me to explain one more time? Okay, yeah, I can do that. So Abu answered 9 questions in 2 hours. So he had 2 hours in total. And 2 hours is 120 minutes, right? Because 1 hour is 60 minutes. 2 hours is 120 minutes. First question, he spent 20 minutes. how many minutes are remaining? It's 100 minutes remaining because 120 minus 20 equals 100. And since he spent the same time on each of the remaining 8 questions, so the minutes he spent on each question is 100 divided by 8, which is equal to 12.5.
Yes, piano done. I know.
Okay, yeah. If you understood this, yeah, great. I think this will be the last question for today. Um, yeah, but I think for next time, we will continue with more mathematics. Um, and do you think today's, how did you think about today's math problems? Were they too difficult? Were they were they easy or were they okay?
It's not that difficult, but piano.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if it's like some are, some are difficult, some are not, right? So, okay.
Piano all.
Oh, yeah, you understood it all. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I can keep explaining this like this for the rest of the questions. Yeah, it's great that you understood all the questions. And yeah, I think for next week we will continue with more of that math then. Okay. Yeah, see everyone next week then. All right. Bye everyone. Bye. Yes, hello.
See you next week.
Okay,
So
yeah.
you share the mathematics slides by email and you see. Okay.
Um, I will share you the agriculture slides. Um,
Okay.
but next week I will share the mathematics slide as well. So, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Extend my greetings to everybody. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye. Yeah.
Sure, you're welcome. All right.